So I'm here doing my evening steps, gentlemen. I think walking, as I made in a previous YouTube post, is undeniably one of the most easiest foolproof ways to lean down. When I think about periods in my life where I've looked the most lean and vascular, I really like that kind of vascular look. I think there is an aspiration of mine to perhaps become the physical embodiment of a penis. And I know, not with any negative kind of connotations, but that very vascular, lean, muscular look, in my estimation, is one of the more attractive aspects of a masculine physique. I think it is such a underutilized. It's a very, very simple tool that you can do in achieving that kind of look, which, in my opinion, is one of the most peak physique types. However, this is not the main crux of the video today. And just on that last point, just a final nice little neat ribbon to tie on the end of that particular point, how many steps do you reckon you're getting in a day? I'm sitting on about 7,000 steps as I'm doing this, and I think I'll be north of 10,000 before the end of the day. But just curious to get your personal opinions on walking and how that's been, beneficial or maybe not beneficial to your particular routine. It's definitely something that I don't like to admit, but towards the latter end of the day, I find myself being drawn towards the television after I've done my work and sitting on the couch and being very, very sedentary. But in this way, just doing some walking for around an hour while watching some lectures, listening to some good podcasts, some education, I think is a really easy way to add not just education, but also, if you're walking, if you've got like a treadmill desk like I do, and a standing desk, an additional way to get that lean, vascular physique. I really wanted to talk about this element of boredom, and it being one of the catalysts that kind of breeds lust, and then lust as a consequence, that desire, that need, that craving for pleasure-seeking behavior. And it's one of the first things I actually talk about with my clients if they approach me and they want to be coached by me. And there is a coaching application down below if you want to work with me one-to-one, have some accountability and that man in the corner to kind of oversee your systems and fundamentally be that accountability towards your goal. But it's very, very interesting to me when men, because a lot of you, reach out. I probably get at least 100 applications every single week when I do promote my coaching program. It's usually around the topic of lust and PMO, as you can imagine. One of the things that we usually talk about is usually not the PMO aspect, which is quite interesting. Of course, we do touch on the subject, but primarily the majority of the time that we spend talking and conversing together and getting, fine, intimate nuance and in-depth details on are day structure and how you coordinate your day to allow yourself to be taking advantage of every given moment to optimize your productivity. And when you negate boredom, it becomes very, very easy. I don't know about you guys, but if you actually just take a moment, maybe just a pause now, or maybe after this video, you can kind of pause the video now and just kind of think, what are the triggers for my relapses? 80 to 90% of the time, they'll be because there isn't a intention to do any other kind of behavior in the context of when that particular emotion arises in you. It's usually you've got some spare time, you've got an hour, maybe you finished work. A lot of men find they relapse just before bed because, again, they're in apathy, they're in lethargy, they're on the couch, they're scrolling. And it's usually the trigger for a lot of men to go onto those websites. So we actually find that the majority of the time we're spending in how we can take advantage of those moments to actually facilitate something that is going towards their North Star being a metaphor for the goals they want to achieve, if they want to lean down, if they want to build muscle, if they want to optimize different areas of their business. We start to get into the nitty-gritty details of what that might look like. So we spend the time looking at the free time that we have within the day and optimizing it in a way which has least resistance to actually optimize that particular asset that we do have. One of the ones I've just prefaced the video with is, well, what can we do that is least resistant to achieving that North Star, which could be the case in just taking a walk outside. I know it might sound very, very simple, and usually the answers to your difficult questions can be answered in a very, very simple way, but it's having the zeal and the energy and the accountability to actually make sure that we're doing that. And if you want something maybe a little less, let's say, invasive, or let's say cost sensitive, there's always the accountability group that we have in the Patreon, which is in the link below. The VIP tier gives you access to a community of men who are keeping each other accountable to those particular goals. We do live calls every Sunday, deep work, meditation, breath work, lectures on spirituality and some of the fundamentals around keeping ourselves accountable to that North Star. And there's some tremendous ideas. I learn a lot, a tremendous amount, in terms of doing what I'm supposed to be doing as, I suppose, somebody that can be seen in some circles, in some light, as somebody that they want to emulate. And it's amazing to say that I mean, by the lovely messages you guys give me. So that's just me taking a moment to kind of meditate and maybe boost my own ego a little bit. But kind of more to the point, what we're actually discussing here is taking advantage of those hours where boredom can start to creep in. Walking outside being a suggestion that I've made previously. Essentially, the weather's making a turn for the good, finally, here in the UK as summer starts to roll around. And the sun is only just beginning to set, and it's about 8:30 by the time that I do this video. So I could, in all intents and purposes, be taking this walk outside, getting my headphones on, listening to a podcast. I also find it's very, very good for confidence when you're walking in public. You actually find that a lot of people don't care in terms of your social anxieties. Another really interesting exercise. What I like to do actually is put my headphones on and get like an AI voice to text generator and just pretend like I'm on the phone and I'm just talking to myself around maybe book ideas, maybe video ideas, other content ideas, project ideas, community ideas that I think could be of utility to myself and of course yourselves as well. Other things that we can do. I used to train late at night when I had a 9 to 5. I usually save my training for the morning. Something I'm also trying to incorporate a little bit more is stretching, because I've never been, I kind of have seasons. I'm sure you guys can kind of be sensitive towards the fact when you get into a season of, oh, I'm going to get really, really flexible. I'm going to deal with that hip pain, that hip injury, that knee injury, that ankle injury, that shoulder injury, do my physio, do my pre-rehab, they call it. Pre-rehab being a word that describes the rehabilitation that you would do prior to an injury. So if you find yourself training a lot like I do, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and the ramifications that could be involved with, say you're benching a lot, shoulder injuries, maybe elbow pain. I have a buddy actually at the moment who's dealing with some shoulder pain, and he's finding allocating time and dedicating time in the evenings where maybe he is watching a little bit of entertainment, a movie. He can sit down, do some rehab work, get the bands out, go through that external, internal rotation, range of motion, and all the pre-rehab exercises that are going to be conducive to not getting injured in the future. I think it's a really interesting aspect of training, which a lot of people neglect. I certainly neglect as well, which I shouldn't neglect, seeing as I have a degree in physiology. Other bits and pieces could be dedicated to reading. Your environment's going to be very, very important. The environment that you're in at the moment, you kind of have actions of association or habits with association with the particular environment. One thing I love doing is resetting my environment, the feng shui of my environment in my flat or in my bedroom or in the other rooms in my space for the kind of behavior that I want. What's interesting to note is if you don't have an intention or a reference point for the kind of behavior that you want to be consistent with, you'll fall back into old patterns. So maybe move the couch, maybe move the workspace, maybe move around the bedroom and set the new intention, okay? my wind down routine is going to be in this chair, reading my book for half an hour, 45 minutes, journaling to yourself, maybe making videos. Even if you don't have an aspiration to be a content creator, I think getting in front of the camera and just speaking to the camera is a tremendous way to develop communication skills, to communicate, to develop language, pardon me, to be sensitive towards how you're presenting information, and also education. One of the best ways to actually ingrain a subject or a piece of knowledge into yourself is to teach it. So maybe you read something in your book and go, maybe I'm going to make it could be a 5-minute video, it could be a 2-minute video on the cliff notes on the book that you've just read. So let's say you read a book on psychology and it's about Sigmund Freud and it's about maybe the archetypes, maybe it's about the collective unconscious. You kind of sit down and go, well, what have I actually learned here? And in that way, you have a wonderful reference point for when you're in a social situation and they go, what are you reading at the moment, Joseph? Oh, I read this book on Sigmund Freud. This was the chapter that I just discussed. And all of that content, in terms of the words you're saying, is going to be derived from the video that you've made. It's a pretty amazing skill to be able, and very impressive. It makes you very, very credible, makes you be perceived in the eyes of others as very, very intelligent and very, very articulate if you can just rattle off some facts because you made a video about it. And again, I don't want this to turn into a ego-boosting video, but I pride myself on my ability. If somebody does ask me about a book or a topic or a subject, I usually have something to say because of the kind of content that I create, especially if it's around the field of psychology, spirituality, whatever the case may be is. And then you're kind of a social hotspot. And people always ask your opinion. Well, Joseph has a really good take on this spiritual concept. And it leads into other areas of conversation. You maybe go, well, Joseph, you're very, very knowledgeable in this particular area. What do you think about this? So there's such a breadth of opportunity and depth to develop other aspects of your game as a masculine man, a spiritual man, a competent man, a mature man, with the hours that you're wasting. I'm speaking particularly towards the latter point of the day because usually the earlier parts of the day are comprised of business, of 9 to 5, and usually in my experience with the clients that I coach, this doesn't seem to be an issue unless they're an entrepreneur. I have coached a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the States and different parts of Europe, like Switzerland, Netherlands, Paris. And, if they have a lot of spare time throughout the day, the Americans and the Canadians, they do love their cannabis and their edibles. And that seems to be a pairing with pleasure-seeking behavior, boredom, and, stacking those kinds of paraphernalia with, illicit behaviors. So the main point, just to kind of act as an anchor for this video, is to really be sensitive towards the moments in your days where boredom starts to creep in with those hours that are free without any kind of pre-arranged plan. You have to plan for it, because if you don't plan, the body is going to revert back to kind of primal mode, and it's going to go survival, it's going to go food, you're going to go to the fridge, to the cupboards, and start seeking kind of comfort food, or the other way, sexual gratification. And lust is not too far behind that, and relapse, shame, apathy, all the emotions that we want to negate in relation to kind of keeping ourselves in the 1%, 0.5% of men in the world. So time, it can be, idle hands are the devil's work. I'm sure you've heard that particular quote before. I'm finding time where you're actually filling up those periods in your life with something a little bit more substantial. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very, very easy. What I'm doing at the moment is kind of screening my YouTube and making sure that I'm unsubscribing to accounts that are more kind of pleasure-seeking boredom behavior or entertainment behavior. Not that it's bad, but I believe that is a small step away from emotions that are going to be more congruent and consistent with lust, desire, craving, longing, and those negative emotions aren't too far behind. So I'm very interested to kind of get your opinions on what else you do in order to kind of fill those hours where you are more likely to experience boredom and hours in your day where you don't have a prearranged plan. I think that that can be the undoing of a lot of men in here. I'm certainly in that category. I'm definitely not perfect in that regard. And yeah, getting your opinion in what you're working on in terms of the areas that perhaps aren't a priority in terms of business throughout the day. Anyway, I'm going to get these rest of these 10,000 steps in. These are not theories, these are facts. Speak soon.